I specifically own two capabilities known as Microsoft Entra Connect Sync and Microsoft Entra Cloud Sync. But the
Yeah.
biggest scenario that Cloud Sync aimed for, that Connect Sync cannot do, is
Yeah.
what we call as mergers and acquisitions. Recently, in the last year, we
Right.
released a new capability called uh, group provisioning to Active Directory, which provisions groups from Entra ID to Active Directory.
Yes.
So, for
Right.
example, we designed it in such a way that we said it doesn't matter where the user is getting synced out from coming, whether it's coming from Cloud Sync or whether it's coming from Connect Sync, it doesn't matter. But Cloud Sync will,
Right.
that provisioning to AD capability will understand both. And I'll be able to add synced users to a group
Right.
as a member, to a cloud group as a member, and I'll be able to provision the group back to Active Directory. I think we rolled out the changes last September, where with the sync account now has only one permission. So the
Right.
surface attack that are being exploited by some of the bad actors in this instance, we have
Yeah.
actually greatly reduced it in that way by
Intro chat with Merrill's live, digging deep where techs thrive. From the latest hacks to cool updates, join the ride, don't be late.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Entra Chat. Today I have Dhanyah Krishnamurthy with me. Dhanyah is the product manager for the hybrid provisioning team. She's part of the Microsoft Security org and in the identity and access unit. Welcome, Dhanyah.
thank you, Meryl. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Very excited to have a special guest here on the show, and we're going to jump into a topic that I think almost all Entra admins work with. So they're going to find this super interesting. So Danny, just tell us about your role and what things you work on as part of your uh, day job at Microsoft.
Sure. So I am a product manager within the hybrid provisioning team, as you mentioned. It's part of the overall identity and network access organization within Microsoft. My role specifically is to help and design products around hybrid scenarios.
Right.
And when I mean hybrid, it is helping identities move from Active Directory into Entra ID or Microsoft Entra ID, as we call it now, and give the ability for admins to perform identity and access management related operations using Microsoft Entra ID. So I specifically own two capabilities known as Microsoft Entra Connect Sync and Microsoft Entra Cloud Sync, which sync identities from Active Directory to Entra ID. And we call that hybrid provisioning.
Nice, nice. So the official name is Entra ID Connect Sync and Entra ID Cloud Sync, right?
Yeah, we
That's
removed
what.
the ID part there. So it's
Oh,
Microsoft
okay.
Entra Connect Sync
Entra
and
Connect Sync.
Microsoft Cloud Sync, Entra Cloud Sync. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So why two solutions? Like, what's the backstory behind why do you have two things? And let's just start there. What's the history?
I wish I knew the entire history about this. So I'm actually technically 4 years into this team, and I still
Yeah.
feel like a new person or somebody learning this area.
Okay.
So my understanding is Microsoft Entra Connect Sync came into this world nearly 7 to 8 years back. It was actually formed from another legacy system called AD Sync, and then
Yes.
it evolved into something called Entra Connect Sync.
Right.
And it was primarily an on-premises application that was used to, like I said, sync identities from Active
From
Directory
AD.
into
Yeah.
Microsoft Entra ID.
Right.
But then we evolved into this cloud world and we were working with cloud related capabilities. We
Right.
wanted to build something around managing and lifting and shifting all of these configuration to the cloud and keeping the on-premises aspects of it very lightweight, which is why Cloud Sync evolved. And so the reason we have two sync clients right now is Connect Sync has been there for years. It's being used primarily by majority of our customers, and we created Cloud Sync in order to help admins and customers reduce their on-premises footprint so that they can start managing all these configurations in the cloud, which makes it a lot easier for them to do. So that's the intent behind the two sync clients. It was not by design, and it just
Right. Yeah.
happened so
Indeed.
that it just evolved like that. Exactly.
Correct. Yeah, as
Yeah.
the product evolves, right? And
Yeah.
it gets to a stage where you can't make like fundamental changes in
Correct.
a product that's used by like millions of customers.
Exactly.
So it's better to start off on a fresh new design and then work on that. So what are the benefits that Cloud Sync brings that you try that's being addressed in Cloud Sync as compared to like Connect Sync?
So CloudSync is it's a completely new platform. It is absolutely different from the ConnectSync platform and how it has been built.
Right,
It is uses a cloud technology, and all the mechanisms for you to set up what we call as provisioning configuration is
right.
done in the cloud. So what
Wow.
does that mean for an IT admin, right? So
Yeah.
today in ConnectSync, you have an MSI file that you have to install. You need to have a
Right.
SQL server behind the scenes.
Right.
You have to set up a multiple set of components, and then
Yes.
you go and log into your domain server, or you log into the server that where ConnectSync agent is installed,
Right.
and you got to go and maintain those configurations from the on-premises environment. Now imagine taking
Right.
all of that and using Microsoft Entra ID to do so. That is
Right.
exactly what CloudSync is, right?
Nice.
But the
Yeah.
biggest scenario that CloudSync aimed for, that ConnectSync cannot do, is
Yeah.
what we call as mergers and acquisitions. And
Okay.
so what this is, large companies or even small to medium business companies nowadays do, they're all global companies.
Correct.
They acquire other companies, or they divestiture from another company, like they don't want to be part of another company. And what happens is, when they, let's say, purchase a company, they also purchase the IAM infrastructure of that company, which means they have an Active Directory instance, and they would have to basically manage those identities and roll them into their parent company, say, for example. If you had to use ConnectSync, you have to actually do what we call as either it is an AD consolidation, where you have to take all these identities from their original AD instance and put them into the parent company's Active Directory instance,
Right.
or you have to establish what we call as network connectivity between the two Active Directory
Right.
instances, so
Yeah.
ConnectSync could be used. Whereas with CloudSync, you don't have to do any of that.
Okay.
So when I actually purchase a new company, and
Right.
let's say now I want this company's identities to go into the same Entra ID instance that my parent company identities are going, all I need to do is install the Cloud Sync provisioning agent in that instance, and that's it. You don't have to establish a network connection. You don't have to do any
Right.
kind of consolidation. So it was mainly built to support the mergers and acquisition scenario,
Right.
and also the reverse scenario, right? If you want to
Yeah.
remove a
Yeah.
specific company
Yeah.
from your
Yeah.
environment, you could do so. And then it evolved into what are the other capabilities that we could add into CloudSync that ConnectSync does today, that actually translates into the real world scenarios. And that's what we have been working on, and that's been our journey. So the two biggest benefits is these, right? Like, one
Right.
is you don't need to have a SQL Server instance. You don't have to have a big
Right. All the
infrastructure instance. All you
right.
need to do is set up provisioning agent, which is very lightweight.
Yes.
And it also has high availability, where you can set up two agents for the same domain, and
Right.
then you can fail over if something happens. Whereas, and then you just use Cloud Sync provisioning configuration. You do all of it in Entra ID. So that's
Right.
kind of what the two biggest benefits that I see.
Nice. So today I was just replying on the Entra Reddit, on the Reddit subreddit for Entra. Someone had asked like, how do I do high availability with Entra Connect Sync?
Yeah,
And so I pointed them obviously to Cloud Sync and said, that's the only way to do it, because you can only have one active, right, with the Connect Sync model that we have today.
that's right.
And so, yes, I didn't realize that mergers and acquisition was like that was the thing that sort of prompted uh, Microsoft to build Cloud Sync. But I guess at that time you looked at all the other things and started doing things like high availability, because that's the first thing a lot of people ask: how do I do high availability and so on. So
And CloudSync is also very easy to set up in that sense, Meryl, because you're managing the majority of the configuration in the cloud,
in the cloud,
and we have pre-built sync rules, very similar to ConnectSync, but it's pre-built, and you don't have to do a lot of manual updates to it in order for you to meet the needs of your organization. That's
Right.
what we have heard from customers anyway. So it's also very easy to set up. It's pretty fast.
Right. And it's auto
Uh,
updating as well,
it
right?
is an
The
it
agent.
has an auto upgrade capability where every time
Right.
we have a new version release, it auto upgrades. Correct.
Yeah. Because most of the work is being done on the server side.
Correct.
The agent is very sort of very lightweight.
Yeah.
So updates are really easy
The other
compared to,
advan
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The other advantage is the provisioning agent is actually shared by three scenarios today. So the same provisioning agent is used for your HR provisioning. And when I say HR provisioning, it means the ability to sync identities or provision identities from your HR systems into Active Directory, right?
Right.
So it is used for that. And it's also used for provisioning identities from the cloud to on-premises resources like LDAP SQL, what
Right.
we call as ECMA provisioning.
The
So all
ECMAs.
the three scenarios are
Right.
actually built into the same provisioning agent. So you don't have to
Oh,
have
okay.
multiple agents.
Right.
You need to have one agent for you to manage that.
Oh, nice. So, how do you envision the future of Connect Sync and Cloud Sync? What are Microsoft's like overall plans for these two solutions?
So we are investing all the new capabilities in Cloud Sync moving forward, and our goal is to eventually have one sync client for all our customers, and that's Cloud Sync. ConnectSync will be there until we get to a point where we can enable all the scenarios, critical scenarios that ConnectSync used to enable for customers in CloudSync as well. And so until we get to that point, we have designed and built the sync clients in such a way that they both can
Right.
coexist on the same environment.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a specific domain and you want to use CloudSync and
Mhm.
ConnectSync in that same domain. But let's say the users are also mutually exclusive in this case, as an example, you could actually run them side by side. We call this side by side
Right.
setup. And so the goal is any new capabilities that we are
Right.
building in CloudSync, we try to make sure that the AD to
Right.
Entra ID flow with ConnectSync works with that. So, for example, recently in the last year, we
Right.
released a new capability called uh, group provisioning to Active Directory, which provisions groups from Entra ID to Active Directory.
Yes.
So, for
Right.
example, we designed this feature
Right.
uh, very cognizantly. We designed it in such a way that we said it doesn't matter where the user is getting synced or from coming, whether it's coming from Cloud Sync or whether it's coming from Connect Sync, it doesn't matter. But Cloud Sync will
Right.
that provisioning to AD capability will understand both, and I'll be able to add synced users to a group
Right.
as a member, to a cloud group as a member, and I'll be able to provision the group back to Active Directory. So from a customer a standpoint or an admin standpoint, we want to make all this seamless so they can continue to use Connect Sync as they are using it today, use Cloud Sync for all
Right.
the new capabilities, and still not do anything from their end other than set up Cloud Sync. So that's where we are in terms of our principle and design
Nice.
guidelines. And eventually, our goal is to say, hey, all of you can now move to Cloud Sync and you don't need Connect Sync anymore. So that's where we want to go
Right.
in the future.
Nice. Right. Okay. So that's really neat. So that's a way for most folks to start using Cloud Sync, right? Like even though you might be having Connect Sync today, you can now start deploying like two Cloud Sync agents and then using that capability to do group write-back. Is that
Correct.
sort of the only feature that you can like split out today? Like, are there options to move any other features into Cloud Sync from something that Connect Sync does today?
Connecting does. So the new capability is that one. So when I say new feature, a feature that doesn't exist
Right.
in ConnectSync today, but exists in CloudSync is group provisioning to AD or
Right.
AKA group writeback as we call it. Today, let's say you're an organization that have a central Active Directory and you're using Connect Sync in order to set it up, right? You could actually, and let's say you go and procure another company, which is a new subsidiary, as we call it, and it has its own Active Directory. You can actually set up Cloud Sync in the new subsidiary, and then you can provision identities to your main Entra ID tenant using the Cloud Sync, while Connect Sync still can continue to, sync identities. So you don't have to disrupt your
Use the
current setup at all and continue to use Cloud Sync for newer acquisitions that you have. So outside of group provisioning to AD, which is a completely new investment in only Cloud Sync, you can still continue to use ConnectSync and CloudSync side by side for an intra to AD scenario, as long as you don't have certain scenarios that Cloud Sync doesn't support today, like the ability to sync devices, or if you have a very large tenant, Cloud Sync doesn't scale today. So outside of these two big ones,
Right.
if that meets your
Right.
needs, you could easily go and do it.
Right. Right. So the acquisitions is a way, or like, when you come up with those scenarios, then you can start using Cloud Sync and then start, bringing that into the flow. Is there anything that admins need to do today if they are like, if they're in using Connect Sync today, which I'm guessing a lot of the enterprises do? Group Writeback is a really good scenario where you would start using Cloud Sync and then, you're setting it up and you get that whole process down. Um, and that's a good place to start. Outside of that, you're saying if they do some mergers and acquisition, then you can also have Cloud Sync and be syncing that.
Correct.
If someone were to just go for Cloud Sync, like if it's a new tenant that we are standing up, they are not using Connect Sync today, or maybe they are using Connect Sync, but just only the basic features. They don't need a lot of the advanced ones. When I say advanced, like the two things you mentioned, right? One is the scale, if it's a really large tenant, and the device write back.
Device sync. Yeah, yeah,
They're like
yeah.
the two big scenarios, right? Yeah. It used to be a lot, the gap used to be very wide, and it's been going down, chipping away at that.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually have something called the Sync Wizard, Merrill, that customers or admins can use
Right.
today, where they can go and select the scenarios that are applicable to them, and then it will actually recommend the right sync client for you. It will tell you whether Cloud Sync is the right one for you,
Oh, okay.
or whether you should be
Oh,
thinking about
nice.
using Connect Sync, right? So, and we've actually integrated that experience in the Entra ID portal. So admins can either go to the
Right.
N365 portal, or they can actually, it is an unauthenticated flow, meaning you don't have to have an account. So it's actually available
Right.
publicly. All they need to do is go and search for Sync Wizard, Microsoft Entra sync wizard, and then it'll take them to that form, and they will give their input, and based on their input it will tell them, hey, go use Connect Sync versus Cloud Sync, and it'll redirect
Oh,
them to install the right
nice.
sync client. So I highly recommend
Nice.
admins do that first, especially for new customers who are going
Yes.
to go and set up the sync. Do this because you will save a lot of time in trying to do the migration later on once you've set up connexing, because
Yes.
we do have a lot of customers that don't know this path, and so we are trying to help them understand that, hey,
Correct.
go
Yeah.
first evaluate what the right sync client is for you, and
Yeah.
then make a decision, because it's a
Yeah.
huge decision when you're setting up the
Yes.
sync client and you're setting up that whole topology, right? It's a lot of work.
Correct. Yes. It's a lot of the cost as well, like having to have those servers, the expertise of setting them up and configuring them. It's not as simple as just doing Cloud Sync on the portal, right? You just go to the admin portal, you can manage it. And then even the ongoing operations, I know, is a lot simpler, right? Like when in most of the orgs that I work with, the large enterprises, you actually have different teams. There's the Entra team that does all of the Entra side of things in the cloud, and then they have the on-prem AD team and the connect. They most of the time maintain the connecting servers and do the upgrades and things like that. And you need to go to them to change the various things if you wanted to make any updates. Whereas with
Absolutely.
Cloud Sync, you can just do all of that in the portal, right? You don't need to even think about remoting into a VM and all of the hassle that comes with it.
Yes, absolutely. You
And
actually hit it right on the nail. One of the core issues that you talked about is so true. It's the delineation of the role itself and how admins think
right,
about it. So that's actually a great advantage on using leveraging Cloud Sync as well, because you don't have to delegate it to somebody to do it. Instead, the hybrid admin
correct,
role
yeah,
in within Entra ID can help you do that. Yourself can you add yourself to that and then just get that going. Yeah,
yeah. And with the Connect Sync, you for certain things you need the domain admin also to sign in, and like where it's locked down, like it adds a lot of friction for just doing some day-to-day things, right? Whereas
correct.
uh, with things like group write back and so on, you just go to the admin portal and you can configure a lot of the things from there.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
definitely a neat thing. So group writeback is an interesting one. What if you want to do group writeback, but you have a large tenant and you can't scale to the limits that are there in Entra Connect Sync in the Cloud Sync? What
hmm
options are there? Any alternative options available, or they
So
would,
we have a
or is it
couple of
can Cloud Sync handle that?
so we have a couple of options to customers. Like honestly, we are right now have a limit of 150K tenant size for group provisioning to AD. So we are saying that if your tenant, your Entra ID tenant has the number of users, groups, and what we known as app role assignments to be within 150K, then yeah, you
Right.
can use a group provisioning to AD. Customers who are larger than that, we are actually doing some investments there to make sure we can scale. Having said that, a
Right.
couple of things those customers could do is they can actually go and use an option called selected security groups instead of all security groups that's there in the scoping
Okay.
filter. So there are two types of
Right.
scoping filters you could use when you're setting up a sync. One is you can pick everything, and then you can do what is known as attribute value filtering, where you pick a specific attribute and then you can filter
Right.
on
Like
it. So
that.
an example is I can say pick all the groups that starts with the description equal to sync or something like that. But then select all security groups. So it'll go and scan all of the groups and then it'll pick only the ones that are matching that attribute value. So that's one way to do it. The other one is you can go and select the specific groups that you want to provision back to Active Directory. And so for those customers, I mean, ideally, I wouldn't recommend them to use group provisioning to AD until we can help them scale. We can help provide the scale for
Right.
those customers. But for the ones that are
Right.
in the borderline of that 150K, the recommendation is try using the selected security groups option in the scoping filter instead of the all security groups. So in that case, the initial sync will be slow, but then what we call as the delta sync, which is the subsequent syncs or the incremental syncs as we call it, will be faster. So that's the recommendation right now, and that's what we have put in our
Right.
public documentation as well. I wish I had better
Right.
news, but like our focus is
Yeah.
to improve there. But right now,
Right.
that's where we are. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a way to move forward, right? With by just selecting the ones that you want to sync.
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Daniel, what I'm sure you see a lot of interesting use cases and different scenarios and so on. What, but do you see any common mistakes that customers do when they're setting up Connect Sync, like
hmm
things that they run into as issues that you might have come
Connect Sync or Cloud
across?
Sync?
In
Both?
either. In
Either.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So most of the times, the questions I get around both Connect Sync and Cloud Sync is around the topology we support, right? So different customers
right,
have different needs. So I'll give an
yeah,
example. We might have customers coming and saying, I want to sync identities from one Active Directory instance, like one domain, to multiple Entra ID tenants, right? Can I do that with Cloud Sync and Connect Sync? And the answer is yes, you can. There's a way for you to do that, and we have like a supported topology documentation that's available in our public
yeah,
documentation, and so we guide them on how to do that. The second most common thing that we usually hear from customers is around especially on Connect Sync is around how to scale, right? So especially for groups and other scenarios, they will come and ask us like, what's the best way for us to scale? Especially very large customers will come and ask this question. And we usually have guidance, like public documentation guidance on how they can. With Connect Sync, one of the things you could do is you can set up your infrastructure in such a way that you can work around some of the perf issues that you might have with Connect Sync. So we have recommendations on how to set up your data centers, how to set up your VMs within that data center, how to, set up the load and stuff. So we might have some recommendations on that. So we usually provide those. And then majority of the issues that we have for customers is around configuration, right? So especially with Cloud Sync, and given that you have dependencies like .NET Framework, TLS, and other network stack stuff, sometimes what we see is we identify a problem where they're not able to connect to the agent. and there is no way for them to troubleshoot it. So they will come to us and say, we are unable to connect to the agent, it's timing out. Can you please help us? And then we will go and dig. Interestingly, for one of the cases that we did recently, we actually found issue with a TLS 1.2 versus 1.3 version like conflict where it was not working for 1.3 but it was working for 1.2, so we had to go and fix
Oh,
something
okay.
in our network
Yeah.
stack to get that. So we do see some new very interesting problems when they come to us, but most of the time it's mainly around topologies, like when they're setting it up for the
Right.
first time, what is supported, what's not supported, and then trying to kind of understand some of the configuration issues that they might see with the agent
Right.
itself. Yeah.
Right. And when you talk about scaling, like what would you consider like at the stage where you need to start worrying about the perf issues and things like that? Like I'm sure there are a lot of these small medium businesses won't even run into any of those issues.
Correct.
Uh,
That's right.
like because I think some people will over engineer when they only have like 10,000 users, maybe. And at where do you, when you talk about scale and some of the things you mentioned, is there sort of a rough number you're thinking? Like those
So
are the key.
we do have scale constraints, right? We tell, for example, Connect Sync, while the number is unlimited for the number of objects that you can have. For groups specifically, we say do not sync groups that are bigger than 200 groups with 250K members or
Okay.
above, right? If you're 250K, that's fine. So one of the recommendations we always make is clean up your groups, break down your groups, don't have too many groups. Like that's the kind of some of these things, I think from the admin side and customer side, they should also think about how to structure Active Directory in such a way that the sync works seamlessly. So one of the feedback that we always get from customers is around groups, and our response usually is, hey, let's make sure that you look at your groups and fix
Yeah.
make sure they're structured in such a way that you can meet the scale requirements of what ConnectSync does. For example, when I talk about large scale, I'm talking about tenants that have like a number of users and groups in the 100,000s, 200,000s, 300,000s, 500K, million. Like that's the range I'm
Correct. Yeah.
talking about,
That's
right?
the,
So
yeah,
for
that's the
very
range.
large customers, you do have
Yeah.
to think about all those things. For the small to
Yeah.
medium business like you're mentioning,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
keep it simple, use the recommended topology, and then just move forward, right? Because you're not going to run into these problems. You're going to run into these problems even with Cloud Sync. So Cloud Sync actually,
Right.
from the AD to Entra ID flow perspective, it supports up to 150K objects per domain. So as
Right.
long as the items in scope are within 150K limit for Entra AD to Entra ID, you should be good to go. Like it's per domain I'm talking about. So if you're in a forest and you have 5 domains, I'm
Yeah.
talking about 150 multiplied by 5, which is 750K
Oh,
objects,
okay.
right? Yeah.
Right.
So it's
Right.
per domain. Like a lot of people get confused with that. And many times, a lot of
Yeah.
customers have one domain that's huge and then they have multiple small domains.
Smaller
In
ones.
that case, we
Yeah.
recommend connecting for the huge domain. And then for all the smaller domains, you can use Cloud Sync. So,
Nice.
you have to kind of figure out what that topology looks like and what the scale looks like. But you could use both interchangeably if needed.
Yeah. And you get your familiar with the process as well, right? Than waiting
Yeah.
till Connect Sync is no longer an option. You start using Cloud Sync, and you can start to see how easy it is to manage as well.
The other thing I would add top of that, Meryl, is the more you do in Cloud Sync now, the lesser migration you have to do in the
Yes.
future, right? So when you're planning this, think about the cost down the line that you have to spend in migrating from Connect Sync to Cloud Sync.
Yeah.
So if Cloud
Absolutely.
Sync is something that's eligible for you, go for it.
Yeah. Awesome. Then moving on to security side of
Mhm.
things. Connect Sync is sort of we classify it as a tier 0 service, right? The servers that you have it installed and so on. Is there a difference from a security perspective between the two compared to Connect Sync and Cloud Sync? Um, like there are less controls or some issues that can happen because I know there, I was watching a session by Lena, who talks about how some attackers, they patched some of the DLLs, like they compromised the server that was running Connect Sync. They patched the server DLLs, and then they were able to make Connect Sync uh,
Hmm.
do things which it it wouldn't normally do. Um, and I know security is something that Microsoft is focused on as well. Obviously, the first thing is to treat it as tier zero, make sure
Hmm.
it's locked down and only the right people have access to it, right? Because the moment someone can go in and do anything on the servers, then
Hmm.
it's mostly like they'll be able to create new identities, etc., and take control of identities through privilege escalation and so on.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this aspect of Connect Sync and security?
So, from a connecting perspective, we have actually done quite a bit of work over the last year to modernize and strengthen the security posture for it, right? So, some of the sessions that you've seen and some of the blogs that we have read about, I've called these out very openly. And one of the things that we did recently over the last 6 months was we actually identified that over the sync account that we were using in order to provision the identities from or sync the identities from AD to Entra ID, it was actually being it had over permissions of close to 50 plus
Right.
permissions that it was using that it didn't need. It just needed one specific permission. And so we actually did a bunch of work to reduce the amount of permissions. We have done that and we did that analysis and we rolled out the changes. I think we rolled out the changes last September, where the sync account now has only one permission. So the
Right.
surface attack that are being exploited by some of the bad actors in this instance, we have
Yeah.
actually greatly reduced it in that way by reducing the number of permissions. So that's the first thing that we did in
Nice.
terms of how we wanted to improve the security posture. There are other investments that I can't talk
Yeah.
about right now that we are doing
Yeah.
around
Be- just
authentication and
before you go
authorization. Yeah.
right into those, do customers need to do anything for
No,
their sync account today?
no, it's already
It's
taken care of.
automatic.
Like the moment we
Right.
deployed it, it went and removed
Right.
all those excess permissions. There was
Nice.
actually, it's a great question you asked. We actually had zero incidents, support
Incidents.
incidents
Right.
from that rollout
Nice.
because we have like you said millions of tenants using, and we had
Right.
zero incidents on the whole
Nice.
rollout of that particular thing. So that was actually a
Nice.
very smooth and seamless thing. And one of the things that I loved about that rollout is customer didn't have to do anything. Like the less
Yeah,
we
that's
have them to
beautiful,
do
right?
changes,
Yeah.
it's amazing, right? So I felt so
Nice.
good about that because we
Yeah.
didn't have to have customers to go do one something, go set up
Exactly.
something or
Usually there's
configure
always
something.
a lot of work, right?
Yeah,
when
yeah,
uh,
exactly.
customers need to do. And this
Yeah.
one, the only people I think who would have raised an incident would be the threat actors who would have gotten impacted with
Exactly.
this. So
Very true,
that's a
very true.
nice one.
And so, like I said, there are investments that we are looking into, and you will probably see some announcements in the future very soon on some
Nice.
of these that you are going to see. So we actually are aware of some of these things that our awesome bloggers, our MVPs, and others are writing about. And we know what's going on, and we are actually working towards it. So
Nice.
that would be my response to that specific question, Mer.
Nice, nice. And Cloud Sync, it uses the same thing, right? So it's a
Yes, it
similar
uses the same
protocol.
sync account.
Yeah,
So whatever we
yeah.
solve for that, we have solved for
Mm,
this as
right,
well. But Cloud Sync does have a different mechanism because, like I said, all the provisioning, configuration, and everything happens in Cloud Sync.
correct.
So there are some instances of that doesn't apply to Connect Sync, but and the infrastructure too, right? Like you have a provisioning agent that you set up, and it require we use what is called as GMSA accounts to run that
Mhm.
provisioning agent, which is a lot more secure. So there are a little bit of different things that we use with CloudSync that is
Using
different
Cloud
from
Sync.
ConnectSync. They're completely
Right.
different platforms, like I said. So the hardening
Nice.
aspect of that stuff, we have to think about it a bit differently for both CloudSync and ConnectSync. But
Right.
like some of the other things would be very common between the two, which we have worked on.
Right.
Yeah,
Cool. So it Cloud Sync does have a slightly smaller surface area than Connect Sync,
correct. Yes,
because the
correct.
brains of it is more. running
More
in
in
the
the
cloud,
cloud.
right?
Yeah,
It's on the
exactly.
Microsoft side of things.
Yeah,
So that's another aspect to consider as well when weighing between Connect Sync and Cloud Sync. Obviously, the features are important, but then the security side as well.
correct.
You just
I
get
mean,
to
it's
know.
just another surface area to attack, right? Like if you have it in one
Right,
place instead of two places, like you automatically reduce your surface attack posture. So that's the main intent behind it.
right. That's awesome. Nice. I feel like we can keep on talking about connecting. Daniel, like, what are your final thoughts and like the sort of the important message you would want to share with the
Yeah,
increasing
I wish I
focus
could tell
management?
all the things that we are doing so that you can get excited about what we're doing, but unfortunately I
Yeah,
cannot. So the only call to action, as I would call it, is like the two. I have two asks for all the admins, right? Like the first ask is just make sure you're using this right sync client. Like I said, it's okay to use both, and Connect Sync might be appropriate for certain scenarios, and Cloud Sync might be appropriate for other scenarios. But make sure you're making the right decision because it is going to have an impact down the line when you have to
yeah,
migrate to Cloud Sync in the future. So I request everyone to go use that Sync Wizard
yes,
capability that is available there publicly.
yeah,
It'll just take a few seconds for you to try it out and say what the recommended sync client is. So please
nice.
do that.
Yeah,
That would be my first takeaway. And then the second one is look out for the what's new announcements that are going to come up in the next few months around this space. We have
right.
tons of good things coming out, and I have
Yeah,
all of those things will be very important for your IAM and access management strategy, as well as how you think about hybrid identities and stuff. So I request everyone to keep an eye on it and look out for
nice.
any kind of announcements so that you can be on the latest and greatest. And then I forgot to mention there are quite a few upgrade announcements that we made recently with ConnectSync,
Yeah,
which we are doing as part of the SFI initiative within Microsoft. Every customer who's using ConnectSync would have gotten these emails.
okay.
So request you to make sure you're on the latest and most up-to-date version of
Version, right?
ConnectSync. So
Yeah,
this way,
yeah,
your setup doesn't break, and you don't end up in a situation where you have to go and fix it in production. So watch out for those emails. Make sure you're meeting the deadlines for those emails so that you are not having a disruptive environment in production in the
yeah.
future.
When you don't have enough time to do
Yeah,
the update, right? And
exactly.
fixing all
Yeah.
the edges. Nice. Awesome. It was such a pleasure to have you, Danya. Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll get you on, like once all the announcements out, maybe we'll have you on to sort of talk about all the cool stuff that's coming and let people know, right? Because I think when those new things come out, there are things that people need to do, unlike the role change where it was all done by us. You would still need to do some work to improve that. But yeah, it's exciting
Definitely,
times.
Meryl. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to having that conversation with you. I have a feeling that'll be a longer conversation than this one.
Yeah,
So
yes.
hopefully,
Yeah,
hopefully
we
we
can
can
deep
have
dive
that. Yeah.
into a lot of that.
Yeah. You can sense the excitement in my voice when I talk about that.
Yes,
So hopefully, like
exactly. Yeah.
everyone else is excited to hear about it when it comes out. So
Yes, some huge updates. I'm
yeah,
super excited.
awesome, awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Meryl. Yeah. Take care.